Welcome to Soulful Sundaze. Sundays, where we are bringing you soul-inspired conversations. Today's topic is addictions. I am your host, Selena Anthony. This is my beautiful co-host, Judy Johnson, and Ty French, hello, my other beauty. So let's talk about this conversation to just put some enlightenment on it.
I don't know if this is appropriate, but can you pass me my drink while we
Yes. Okay.
Champagne.
Okay.
We're going to toast to the transparency that we get to share with each other and with you.
Yes.
Cheers
to that.
So this is an interesting topic.
It is.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I know I grew up in a household that was very strict. Mm-hmm. Coming from Jamaica, and weed was everywhere, and no, I did not know marijuana existed until I moved to America, to foreign. But my household was one that we enjoyed drinking. So it's kind of weird that I reached for my glass. But in that, it wasn't, for me in my household, even though I witnessed it, it was always a party going on somewhere, there was great restraint in my life. But I didn't realize I was overindulging in certain things, whether it be sex or even now social media, really having to assess what's the indicator for someone to recognize, hold up, I got a problem and I need help.
Yeah. Right. The indicator. Yeah, it's tough. It's different for everybody and each addiction, you know what I mean? And I don't have an answer for that, but I realized with mine when we were talking about having this dialogue about addiction, we automatically go to drugs and alcohol. And then you listed quite a few addictions that we can have, and for me it was food. And I didn't realize that till later, and it wasn't that I just was this glutton, when you have this idea of like, oh, I'm addicted to this thing and you're just overindulging like all in one sitting, it was not that, it was little by little. And I think what's interesting, what incited this addiction to me is because as a kid, we're all in the industry. I started in the industry. I got my first agent at 13. And I think I shared in the industry one how when I turned 15, they wanted me to come back for the iPod commercial. Didn't have to audition anything. And then they saw me and said, oh, she's gained weight. We don't want her. And so instead of that doing what you think it would do, like me going back, let me get in the gym or lose weight, whatever it was, I started eating more, and I found myself, I remember I lived close to 7-Eleven when I was like in the junior year in college, and I wanted a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and I would eat it every night. Not the one pint, I would go get another pint.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
wow.
And kill that thing. Wow. And in my mind it was working where it's like, well, I'm going to stop eventually, and I'm going to work out, duh. That was the conversation I was having. It wasn't like, this is not good. Yeah. Like, oh, no one's going to tell, you're not going to pick up weight by eating this, but again and again and again, and then just everything, and sugar. Sugar is an addiction for a lot of people that they don't realize you're addicted to sugar. And that's what that whole thing was. And so I don't know, that comment of me having to lose weight, having to look a certain way, it was so deep rooted. I didn't realize that was the issue until you asked that question.
Yeah. Well, and I brought it up because one time I remember with my daughters, newly being single mom and everything. I remember catching myself because again, weed was not the thing, marijuana was not the thing in our household. But I always saw my dad have a glass, and I put my daughters to sleep. And I remember going to pour myself a glass of wine, and I was like, I'm drinking wine by myself. Nothing's wrong with that. Right. Yeah. Drinking wine by myself at the end of the day. Again, nothing wrong with that. But then it was something in me that said, watch it. What are you doing? Yeah. Why do you need to do this? Why do you need to unwind this way? And it was more of a self conviction of, I don't want to end up somewhere where I don't want to be. But it started very early for me because I just always saw something in my household where I'm like, I don't like it when daddy do this. I don't like it when my dad was involved in he acted real funny. It was fun. It was great. He was more relaxed. But at the same token, I didn't like the fact that he needed a drink to be fun.
Yeah. See, this is a very touchy conversation for me because I was that person who grew up in a home where I saw these addictions, drugs and alcohol and sex. I saw it all in my home. I saw multiple addictions. Growing up, my mother was addicted to drugs, all kinds of drugs, from coke to
heroin?
No, not heroin. She was addicted to coke. She was addicted to drinking. She had a drinking problem. Like my mom and her friends could sit around a table and drink and get high day after day after day. Like I promise you guys, it was times where I would go to sleep and I would wake up and they'd be doing the same thing. I would come home from school and they would be doing the same thing. And this would go on for weeks, and then there would be a time in my house where they're asleep for a couple days. And then once they're up, they're doing it again. And I didn't realize, like as a child, like what is this? What is this pattern I'm seeing every day? And as I got older, I realized, okay, that what they were doing was making me so frustrated. Like, why am I not seeing my mother ever happy? Or am I not seeing my mother do any motherly things besides get high or drink to cope with her day? And a lot of times we don't realize that addictions are caused by different triggers. So my mother, I didn't learn until maybe a few years ago that she was addicted to these things because of the loss of her father, her being molested, her being a prostitute. My mother went through a lot of things, and I'm sharing a lot of her business, and it's hard to share it, but she went through a lot of things. So it's not that I didn't understand, but it was like I'm not in her shoes, you know. But I knew at a very young age, I knew that there had to be something better. There had to be how do you replace these addictions? And I realized, because of the frustration that I had from seeing her do it, I will always say, I'll never be my mother. I'll never do, my family will never see their mother doing drugs or alcohol. I've never smoked, not even like weed. The most I drink is wine. Because I was always nervous, because I felt like, well, if I do this, even with a pill, like my mother was addicted to prescription pills, which that became an addiction. So it was like she no longer was doing the drugs, but she was substituting the drugs for a Percocet or a Xanax. And I realized that if you don't have a connection with God, it's so easy for a person to get addicted to something else, because it is like it's like a hole in your heart. It's like you're missing something. So let me just fill that space up with all of these unnecessary things that we don't realize that it's really deteriorating us. It's not feeding us, but we don't know that when we're addicted.
Right. You know, it's unique that you say that, because I completely agree. There is something missing when people seek to get high, to be under the influence. And it's so unique that just the saying to get high, to be elevated. Why is it? I find it unique that it's the elevation is to go higher, is to go closer to something that is above. So even when you think about the missing link, the missing piece being or needing to feel connected, it's unique that people really need to just kind of take a moment to self-reflect, to see what's not there. What are they not plugged into, as opposed to reaching for anything that can substitute for the moment.
But a lot of times what I've seen that it's so easy to grab hold of the things that you can grab a pill, or you can grab a bottle of wine or a Coke 45, because you can ignore your feelings. You don't have to feel. And just recently I was speaking to one of my girlfriends, and she confided in me and told me, like, and this is no names, but it was just like, I didn't want to feel. So I just been drinking and drinking and drinking. It's like, okay, what are you going through? Let's get down to the root of what you're going through, because you need to feel in order to really survive. We can't just ignore what we're going through, because all we're doing is digging deeper holes in our life, in our minds. And that's and a lot of times addictions are a generational thing. It can, so because my mother did it and it was seen in a household, I now have, you know, siblings who battle with these things as well. Now, then you have some who's the opposite, like, oh, because like me, I seen it. It's like, oh, I don't want no parts of it. But you got to be careful that you may have some who their flesh is a little weaker where they do battle it, because it's like, well, my mother did it and she didn't die. You know, it's okay, you know? And I thank God that my mother is alive and she's healthy. But I will say she's healthy today, but addictions really take a toll on your body. And she may be healthy physically, but mentally she is battling some things that she has to deal with because of the consequences that she's made in her past. So it's very touchy. It's a very hard topic.
It is. And I know that we talk about my family a lot, and you know, we say it all the time, the Huxtables, but it's no family's perfect. My mom, I actually have a very small family outside of my immediate family. So there's my husband. He and I are just our family, but then my mother, father, my sister, that's just it. Now, my dad has one sister, no kids. My mom has two brothers. And one has two kids, but they're not around because both of my mother's brothers struggle with addiction. Her younger brother was addicted to alcohol. And when he would get drunk, he would get very violent, and he abused women and went to jail behind it many, many, many times. And then her other brother, her older brother, was addicted to crack cocaine. It is addicted to, you know, still. And just the trauma and the pain that it has caused our family. I mean, to the point where my mother never turned her back on them and always tried to help. And my father, being the supportive husband, would constantly lend a hand and let them in sometimes. And I remember one time I was a kid, and I remember it very vividly, because my uncles were fun when I could recognize them, when I was really, really young. And they let the older one, who was addicted to crack cocaine, they let him stay after he was released from jail to my parents. Wasn't supposed to happen because my parents are LAPD. You know, that's a conflict of interest. Wasn't supposed to be happening, but the judge did let him go. And in the middle of the night, one of the nights that he stayed, he snuck up into my parents' room. And my dad was an undercover cop at the time. And so he had these fake checks for Bank of America, because he would go to, you know, bust the prostitutes or whatever fun thing he was doing. And he stole those. And he went in my mother's underwear drawer and stole $500 cash from her and then left. You know, so I just remember my mom, oh my God, my mom has this shrill in her voice, like when she's yelling at me and my sister when we were growing up. And then when that happened, and it just struck a chord, and to know, I was 7 maybe, but I understood very clearly what that was. And I knew that my mom, like you, she governed her life trying to be something totally different than that, you know, but I admire her strength because she still enjoys herself a cocktail and is able to do that, you know. She knows her balances, but that curse, it is a curse, and it's a generational. My grandmother, so their mother allowed them to start smoking weed because they were going to do it in the street, so they might as well do it in my home.
Wow.
And so that was her mind frame around it. And my grandmother died when I was only 5 years old, and my mother says my brothers killed my mother because she worried them. They worried her to death because she had to go to. They were very smart boys, especially the older one. She had to go to the college because his roommate said, "Your son's over here strung out on crack." Can you imagine getting that phone call? I couldn't. Like, I'm getting chills thinking about it, you know, and
I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, it's just, it's so much with it. And so even though we say my family's a certain way, we still deal with that. Even up until they keep coming in and out of our lives, we try to just drown them in love and let them know that we're here. But it's, as you said, mentally, physically, they might be okay. They're holding jobs, they're doing whatever they're supposed to be doing to be, you know, law-abiding citizens, but there's still that mental thing that is just fried, and that's who they are, you know.
And the reason why I'm getting emotional hearing her story, because it's so much like my story, and it's crazy because I think it was yesterday I called my husband because I was having these dreams about my mom, and I was like, my grandma who's passed keeps showing up in these dreams, and I called my mom, and my mom was like, I had a dream about mommy, and I was like, wait, when did you have a dream about grandma? And she told me she had a dream about my grandma the same day I had my dreams. And I was just having a conversation with him, and I was like, this really is a generational curse. Like, I always said that my mom and her siblings killed my grandma because my grandma had to take care of so many people and had to pick up the pieces of what my mom couldn't do because she was high, like down to getting out her bed to take me to school on certain days, or like to come and bring us food on certain days because we didn't have, because my mother was nowhere to be found. So like this is very touchy for me to even be transparent and have this conversation, but I know that this story needs to be heard because there are so many people out there hurting because of addictions. And how do you heal? How do you heal? Like, I realized that the addictions that my mom went through was because of what she was in. My grandma was married to her husband owned a bar. So it was what my mother saw.
She was exposed
to it. So she dived right in it. You know, and now seeing my siblings diving right in it because they can't deal or they can't handle what life throw at them. So it's just like, how do you heal in these type of situations?
You got to make that decision, you know, and we talked about it in another episode, like making that decision to say, I don't want to be this way. And it doesn't matter how much love that we give my uncles or how much love you give your siblings, you know, or your family. They got to make that choice. You know,
and you do stand as a living testimony to those that are asking that question, whether they are in a home that their parents are under the influence or that their significant other is heavily battling with an addiction. You do, when you look outside the world and you recognize that there's hope and joy and life outside, at some point you have to make the decision to be the hope, joy, and life for yourself. Because how do you learn something that you don't know? You have to want something that you've never had, and
you
then
have to want something different.
Action. And that's the hard part.
Oh, it's so hard.
It's the hard part to say, nah, I'm good. I'm going to pass in a club. No, I'm good. I'm not going to hang out with that group. Or more or less, let me feel this pain. Because pain is an indicator that something's wrong. When you have a pain in your side, you don't ignore it and keep living. You have to figure out what's going on because you are alive. There is something wrong. Attention is needed. So attention is needed as to what's missing, what you're exposed to, and sometimes it's the ability to self-reflect, to plug in, to find out what's missing, what don't I know that I need to know, that no one can tell me. Let me go within, because on a subconscious level we are connected to the infinite source of everything. What you don't know, you do know, but you gotta go find it.
And if God created all of these feelings, you know, all of these different emotions, then we have to know that He knows how to heal them. So we're going through some things. If there's a void or there's some pain, it's like, instead of going to the outside source, a drug or a prescription or a bottle, it's like, let me go to God. Like, what I realized over the last couple years, even when I have like a pain in my knee or like a headache, my husband will tell you, I don't even take Tylenol.
I don't either.
I do not even touch Tylenol. I'm like, nope. In the name of Jesus, this is done. Like, I will literally do that because I don't want that stuff in my body.
I do that same thing too, and it's not for addiction purposes. It's just like, no, I want to know when this pain leaves. And Tylenol ain't getting it to leave. Tylenol
is a Band-Aid. It is a Band-Aid. And that's the same thing with the drugs. That's the same thing with the alcohol. It's the same thing. It's just it's a temporary fix.
But I do encourage those that if you're going through something and you need the help and you're struggling with it, pray. Seek a friend, a sister, a cousin, an uncle, a therapist, whatever. Know that there is somebody else in the same situation that or been through that situation, and they can help you. And when you win, you will be that person who helps the next person. You're designed. We're connected.
Yeah.
We're connected. So if you've experienced something and I'm about to hit that roadblock, I need your advice. I need your wisdom, and vice versa. So when I learn and gain, it's my responsibility to share to the next person in need.
Yeah. I have a friend recently, she's been posting on social media. So this is a good way to segue into social media being an addiction too. But I do have a friend on social media who just had a baby. So she's been going through like postpartum depression. And depression can be an addiction if you stay there. If you stay there, it's like it's a person who's just addicted to want to be depressed or want to be in this low place, you know, like, and that's hard to come out of.
Yeah.
But I have a friend who's been very transparent, just sharing her journey of postpartum. So she's like on social media just crying and just sharing, and that's good because she's healing people. She's allowing people to see that, look, I had a baby too, I'm going through this. What I'm going through, let me help you. Because there's people who go through postpartum and they commit suicide, or they give their babies up for adoption because they think that they're going through this alone, and that nobody else in the world is going through it. So what I always remind, like, you know, friends or even myself, like I tell myself, like, Lena, it is okay to not be okay.
Yes. Feel your feelings, because when you try to suppress them, that's when you seek alternative methods to heal them. You know what I mean? Feel your feelings. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated, to be angry, to feel ugly on the inside, because you know it won't last forever.
This too shall pass. Now about that social media, I had to come up off that, man. That was a situation for me, because if I can't sleep, where's my phone? What they done posted? I want to know. Or the first thing you do when you wake up, or when you have a minute. But I used to read books. Or audiobooks, or write, or do something. What did I do before social media existed?
People don't realize that social media is
driving like,
what is happening with the driving?
Everybody's driving. I was about to reach for my phone.
But the phone is right next to us.
Not mine.
But it's not an addiction. I do have a kid that's in school.
Right.
But there is an addiction to people who's just constantly on their phone.
Swipe here, swipe.
But you know what? The people who are in charge of those things are playing into that, into people's, you know, susceptibility to be addicted to something. That's why they keep changing, adding stories and then stickers and then polls.
Yeah, it's the mind mapping. It's the sound of wind. Ooh, I have a heart. Ooh,
and not only that, that sometimes you don't even realize some of the things that you're doing. I remember early on in social media, like, you know, you take selfies. I'm like, oh, let me take a picture. And it wasn't so much that, oh, I think I'm cute. I just took a picture. And some of my friends were like, oh, man, you're so vain. And I was like, that really caught me off guard. I might have said this, I don't know if I said it in a previous episode, but I was like, no, I just took a picture. And that really made me stop and like reassess. Like, you gotta
be careful though, because people will project.
That is true.
No. You vain boy, I look cute.
That is true. Well, people say you have a lot of, you know, selfies, then I'm scrolling through and I'm like, okay, I guess that's a lot. What's a lot? You know what I mean? It wasn't like every picture. But you find yourself kind of getting sucked into that whole social media thing, and I think people don't even realize they're addicted to it.
Yeah, it becomes an addiction when you spend more time on social media than you spend time with your family, or you spend time doing your job.
Right.
It's like you're just constantly scrolling. What are you looking at? You know, sometimes porn. You know, because
social media.
That is on social media.
So I put myself in a program where I'm not necessarily. Actually, I don't want to tell this. I am on social media. It is me that's responding to y'all. But I do that because I don't want to touch it. I don't want to touch it. And nowadays, even when it comes to the millions of people that's following, that have the influence, what's interesting is they ain't operating. They out making money off of your eyeballs and watching it. So they're benefiting from your addiction. Can you believe that? Like, you benefit. So what are we feeding each other, and how are we allowing ourselves to go through this, not recognizing this is a problem?
Because people are blaming it on, it's the culture. We're in a culture where we're on our phones, where we have social media, we have an app for everything. Is there an app for that? Is there an app for that? For everything. There's even apps that feed into Instagram to make it easier to, whether to time them, whether to repost something, whether to share a story. There's different apps that feed into it. So it's a big ball of confusion, and people are mislabeling it and saying, oh, it's part of the culture. It's just 2019.
Like,
that's what we do.
Social media
is literally, look at me, look over here. And then the next person, look at me, look over here. it's tainted the mind to want to know what's next. So when issues arise that we really need to focus on, we don't, because here comes the next headline.
Exactly.
And
distraction.
I have a question. It's not about social media, but like, when do sex in the relationship become an addiction?
Wait, so before we go there, can I say one more thing about social media?
Sure.
So another thing that's leading to addictions on social media is the shopping. They have got this marketing down.
Yes.
Even me lately, I've been buying shoes because I've seen them on social media from the UK. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like,
no. Wait until you find the one store that you buy the wrong product from. You'll be cured. At least that's what
you're
happens.
right. Yes, you're right. But lately, I just realized I'll wake up in the morning after I bought like the first 2, shipments or whatever. Then I'm like, oh, what can I buy today? Like, do I have a money tree?
Yeah.
What? How is this happening? And so they're feeding into that. And so, that's part of the social media. It's not even so much about just posting, but now they know how to get people because they know where
they're very strategic.
Lucky. And that's what I was thinking. I was
keep
just
buying the wrong product. I don't want nothing else. I can't even send it back to China for 75, 78.
Right. Well, I guess that's how you're cured.
I need help. Spread some of that on me, okay? Put it down the phone. Okay.
I mean, as you can see, addiction it's so many. There's so many addictions.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about addictions all day long, but I do want to jump into this topic. Like, when or how, like, in a relationship, when is it like an addiction?
Relationship,
like
or if you're single, just bang
everything.
everything.
Or if you're single. If you're single.
I think it's a single thing.
Yeah, single.
More so than relationship.
When I was single, I don't know. That wasn't. I mean, I didn't. I was like, this is a tempo. If you gonna get with me, or if I'm gonna get with you, it's not no bouncing to the next thing. But I can see how someone is looking for love, and looking for intimacy.
But are you looking for love in all of these men? So you're constantly having sex?
Well, when you look at the culture and you look at what people are taught, this is what love looks like. Right. When you boot up, you have someone that's in your bed, or you have someone that you can snuggle with, because it's what. Cuffing season. So you're almost programmed to, this is what love looks like, as opposed to, no, get you a nice warm blanket, stay hibernated by yourself for the season, and pour self-love in, as opposed to, let's just.
I think for me, I was just never one. Now I have friends who were addicted to sex.
So why?
But I think for me, I was never that person where I'm going to find love in just having sex with different men.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot find love that way. But the only way you can find love, honestly, like, you have to find the love within God first, so that you can love yourself, so that you're not always searching for a certain love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and when I look at it too, sex is the symptom of a deeper problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know I've witnessed a lot of people who, it appeared as if they were addicted to sex, when really they were addicted to not being alone. They didn't want to face what they would have to face by themselves.
Or addicted to control. Because a lot of times sex is a control. It's when you're not in a marriage, it becomes a control. Like, even with women who just want to have sex, it's like, it's a mind thing.
It is.
And you have to be very careful who you are open to.
Yeah, because I have friends that say to feel loved, to feel that they're sexy or beautiful even, that a man should want to have sex with them. And so they would, like, seek out sex more so than a relationship. Like, if a man wants me, he's going to want my body. And it's like, no, he should want your mind, your heart, your spirit, And so I think it's very dangerous when you talk about sex and being addicted to sex. I mean, I've heard of people being addicted to sex in a marriage, but usually that person in the marriage who is addicted to sex is having sex with other people outside of the marriage, like Eric Benet was when he was married with Halle Berry, or to Halle Berry. Now, do you guys know, anyone have heard of someone who's in a relationship, a marriage, that is addicted to sex, but only having sex with their partner?
So I'm very close to someone who was in a marriage where the partner was addicted to sex. Okay. So he would control her and manipulate her to have sex every single day. And there were different ways they had to have sex. and there were different like positions, and he would make her invite other people in.
Oh wow.
Oh.
And I remember her like confiding to me, and I'm like, your husband has an addiction. And she was so like in denial, like, you think so? Yes, he's addicted to sex.
Interesting.
Because when you're married, a marriage should be between you and your mate. You should not bring in other people. You should not be forced to have sex certain ways. Like, yeah.
I feel so bad.
But we want to spice up our marriage.
I'm
but
like,
we
no,
don't-
have her invite a male. And
Right, and see what
like,
he-
nah, baby,
let's
I'm
see
good.
what he
I'm
says.
cured, baby.
Now
I'm
he's really
cured.
addicted to sex if he says, okay.
Now, are you addicted to sex if you bring toys into your relationship?
No, that seems like you're
No,
just kinky.
it's
There's a
just
freak
fun.
meter, so I mean, what's your freak meter?
Toys
Do you
like,
have a freak?
Wait a minute, you got some toys?
She broke out the toys.
Toys like the candy cock ring or the
Wait, did you zoom
years
in on
of
that?
sex,
What? What is this? The years of sex?
or we got some dice, you know,
What does it say?
Wait a minute.
Kiss
ear.
and
I need to go shopping
in
with
a
you.
Now, I will say, I actually bought these toys. My friend hyped me up like, oh, you should buy these toys, you know, for when you go on your honeymoon. Do you guys see everything is still labeled, like sealed up, like did not use anything. Now, I don't think that's an addiction. I do think that's fine, you know, spice up your marriage.
Deal out. Let me just go ahead and give this back to you and keep that over there.
And I don't think it's an addiction. I do think it's fun, but it can get out of control.
It can,
Yes,
but
it
as
can.
long as you and your partner have an understanding and an agreement that you want to explore in a fun way, and you introduce these things, and it's quite all right. But if your partner is like, no, today, right now, come
Today you're
home.
gonna kiss my ear, and you're gonna roll the dice, and you're gonna kiss
Tease
the nipple.
the nipples. Now I have a story. It's along in the vein of this. So if you're under the age of 17, please log off.
Yes.
And I'll keep it as PG as I can.
Everybody
but
clicking on.
right? Increase those numbers, right? No. There was a guy I was dating, and we were new in our dating relationship, you know, and I actually was really interested in dating this guy because I met him before we started dating, but he was in another relationship. And so finally he was available. So I was so excited to be in this relationship with him. Come to find out, long story short, he was in a relationship with somebody else. So he was a dog. He was a player. And I found out, you know, us women, we can be very investigative. I was doing some surveillance on social media and found all this out myself. And I contacted the girlfriend just to see. I was like, well, we're in a relationship. And she was like, well, we're in a relationship. And she was saying, trying to tell me things about him, like, well, do you know this? Do you know that? And one of the things was, you know, well, when we're having oral sex and he's receiving, he has this toy that men use that for, or anybody can use for anal pleasure, but it was his toy. And so while he was receiving the, you know, oral pleasure, he liked for her to put that back there. And that was shocking to me. And it was a thing that it was like, it was required. The way that this girl, she spoke to me very much. It was very similar to how the women on R. Kelly's thing, and I hate to bring that up, but it was very similar. That feel she was a victim, you know, and she was like, I'm trying to leave. I can't leave. So it became like a therapy session and all of that. But he was addicted to this sex toy, you know, during this time with his woman.
It's interesting that he didn't bring it up to you. I wonder if that
No.
dealt with the respect level or
Right.
or the
And that made me question that because it was to the point where even in our relationship.
respect level. Sorry, take that off the table. He was excuse me.
Right, but you know what I mean. He knows what he can do with certain people. He knows
yeah.
who's going to put up with what, who to push the envelope with. And with me, there were things I was identifying about him, like, hey, if you want to be in a relationship with me, you got to step this up, this up, this up.
Yeah.
He was doing that. He was meeting those demands. In the meantime, having this girl captive at home who had to cook his meals, had to do all this things, and she would cry to me.
Yeah.
You know, he is a different person with different people, but that addiction. You know, he was giving me pieces of who he really was. And according to this girl he had at home, you know, he had a list in his drawer of women that he has conquered.
Oh, wow.
So he was just really kind of
that sounds like an addiction to me.
Yes.
You need help for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes.
As long as you are in a healthy mindset and what you're open to with your partner, and even how you socialize amongst friends with a cocktail, and finding relief, whether it be through medical assistance or not, is really important to really pay attention to your internal workings and what you lack.
Absolutely.
And make sure that you go to the source of what you're lacking to be fulfilled, that you required nothing external.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are so many different hotlines out there for all kinds of addictions, whether it's alcohol abuse, verbal, physical, sex, toys, sex, whatever it is. There are so many different hotlines out there, and we just urge you to contact them if you feel like you have an addiction. We hope that this episode sheds some light on addictions, and we hope that at the end of the day, we as women and men in this earth realize that addictions can be avoided if we really just go to our source, which is our Father, our God, who is the creator of all of our emotions and feelings. And
So,
cheers to
transparency.
Transparency.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for joining us.